Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, Trap. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the Trap team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of Trap.
Yes, indeed, dear Trappists. Welcome back to what many people are calling episode 21 of the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, Trap. My name is Nick Lincoln, or Lick Lincoln. Joining me are two of the three other horsemen of the apocalypse, Andy Hart and Alan the Storyteller Smith. But we have a special guest host for this episode as our fourth horseman, Carl Widger. It's 1 a.m. in Los Angeles. Carl's on his knees somewhere in a side alley off Sunset Boulevard looking for an Irish pub or somewhere selling him cans of Heineken. We have Emmelia Powell as our fourth guest host. Welcome, Emmelia.
Morning. Thanks for letting me join you guys.
No problem at all. Our pleasure. Emmelia, just so the Trappists have a flavour of who you are, tell the dear Trappists a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I entered the profession about 3 years ago. I work with my mum for Premier Wealth Solutions. I'm still on my exam course path, so a bit with Alan here, going up the hierarchy, trying to catch my mum who did all the exam routes. And during my journey, my husband is a sports professional and felt that there was an opportunity to offer advice to people that are in similar positions that we are. And I launched the subsidiary band Premier Wealth Solutions Sports Professionals. Otherwise, in my spare time, I'm a mum to 3 kids, busy life, work hard.
Great stuff. And you and your mother, you went to a very expensive recording studio.
It's Emmelia on the show. She investigates, interrogates, and soaks it up as she goes.
Oh, brilliant. Our first guest host and our first guest host drop. Thank you to you and Jackie for doing that.
Just got to smash it, haven't you? Come in, make an impact.
Yeah, smash it. That's one way of describing it. Definitely smash it. Excellent stuff.
Emmelia, you're really welcome on the show. Great to have as our first guest co-host. It's worthwhile noting that as it's the 21st episode, Nick, we are now officially in the top 1% of all podcasts ever in the history of the world. Because remember that's the thing that Chris, your mate Chris, Andy talks about. Because 99% of all podcasts, Chris Williamson talks about this, 99% of all podcasts never get past 20 episodes. So we're officially in the top 1%. And you're here as well, Emmelia, to celebrate. So, yeah, welcome.
Great stuff. So, just one quick closed question. Your husband, Emmelia, was he a professional football player?
Was he? He is actually still a professional footballer. No, but the joke is he hasn't got a contract at the minute, so I suppose is the right term to use. But no, yeah, he's still in sports.
Okay.
You call it kicky
Grey,
ball,
but not yet 30. So.
Pardon, kicky ball. Yeah. Well, I don't. Emmelia, my team is such. I have one is Watford, which is a joke for all the wrong reasons. Okay, let's give this episode a topical timestamp with some topical tidbits. And I'm going to launch off on this one. This is,
reviews first, Nick.
Oh, reviews! God, I'm sorry.
Come on,
Mr.
absolute
Hart.
shambles.
21st episode.
Oh my God,
Absolute shambles.
Right,
over to me.
Mr. Hart. Sorry, give us 3 more high energy podcast reviews.
Okay, the first review is from Phil723. The 4 horsemen are crushing it, 5 stars. Great insights, useful advice interspersed with lots of banter and invaluable resource. Next up is a must listen wherever you are in your financial planning career. Some great insights and nuggets, a very easy listen. Nick Platt, a good friend of the show. And the final one is from Ray Prince, not too shabby, 5 stars. And here was me thinking that the old Southern mucker, Mr. Lincoln, had hung up his mic. You can't keep him silent for too long, if at all. And here he is, mixing up with three wise heads full of wisdom and advice, all aimed at helping financial advisors and planners get better at what they do, which in turn helps with our clients. Episodes 11 and 12 are gold dust with Nick's If I Was Starting Again, niche marketing strategy spot on. Keep it up, chaps and chapesses. So over to you, Nick. Back to you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Andy. Yeah. And Ray, thank you for that very, 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 very kind words. Okay. So this is the real straight into the weeds stuff as well. But we're all aware that about 7-8 years ago, final salary transfers were, for whatever reason, technical reason, just very high relative to what they've been before. And that led to some good practice, but also a lot of bad practice. In other words, people transferring out of these schemes. So you might still get clients who've got these final salary schemes from years ago, and they've asked for a transfer value, and they might come to you and say, well, this looks on paper like a really big amount of money. It might be the biggest asset they own outside of their properties, say. There's a decent website, and I'll put a link to it in the so-called show notes, the XBS Transfer Value Tracker, which tracks transfer values of a typical DB member over the years. And it's just graphic, and you can just show to clients, you might think that figure of whatever it is, 200, 300 grand is a lot of money, but actually transfer values have fallen off a cliff over the last couple of years, again, for a variety of technical reasons that clients don't really need to know. They just need to know you've told them that their transfer values have gone down. And it's quite just a useful resource to show people, just if you think your transfer value is high, they really have plummeted. And it's an ongoing graph, so it's updated all the time. Basically, transfer values, according to this graph, have gone from the typical transfer value has gone from £270,000 to £168,000.
Wow.
Big, and that's
big fall. That's interest
on,
rates and gilt yields, isn't it, predominantly?
It's collapsing gilt prices and rising gilt yields. It's all linked to this stupid. I mean, actuaries really they should be rounded up. This idea that you had to match future liabilities by going into gilts on DB schemes, which really made DB schemes unaffordable in the early noughties. Insanity on stilts, but there we are. Okay, Mr. Smith, Life After Me.
Lifeafterme.com. Mutual friend of ours, Helen Howcroft, an advisor in London, mentioned this last week. Quite interesting, actually. Lifeafterme.com is a digital platform where you can store assets. So you, in theory, this is kind of, in order to have a central place to store important documents such that if you're no longer around when people pass away, obviously you could scan in wills and trust documents and various other things, but increasingly we've all got more and more digital assets, and not just kind of digital books, digital music, but things like emails. If somebody passes away, your family have no longer got access to any emails, any past information that's held on a digital platform. And if you tell your email provider that the person has died, then they'll immediately close it down. So this is a methodology of storing this information. I've had a look at it. I haven't gone any further than just looking at the website, but it does say it's all encrypted data, GDPR approved and so on. But I just thought it was quite interesting as we all get older, as clients get older, just to have a useful place to store vital data such that the family isn't in a complete mess after somebody passes away. So worth having a look.
I think these services will become more and more prevalent and a lot more. At the moment, there's not really much around this space, but I believe more and more companies will be getting into this space. You're right. It's just how easy is it going to be to upload all the information? Then you're going to share the passwords with people that you trust, and when you pop it, then they're going to log in. And it's interesting. It's a mess, isn't it? Your digital footprint post death is a complete mess. Google, Dropbox, two-step authentication, all the passwords, bank accounts. Yeah, it's messy at best. Over to you, Nick.
Yes, I looked at Helen's link when she sent it through to us, to the group that we're in, the peer group, and there are quite a few of these now, aren't there? That's the only thing, and you're thinking, okay, which ones are going to survive in terms of being profitable and so forth. But I saw my parents. My parents are alive, and I saw them in Spain a few weeks ago. My dad has written out all the stuff. He's very pragmatic, my dad. He's called it like the Book of Death. This is where everything is, but it's all handwritten.
Very, very
and,
Lincoln.
Yeah.
I would say that my generation, I would love something like this. But other clients that we work with, or maybe people that aren't as IT literate, this might be a bit overwhelming. I know when I've sent out and trying to make things go more IT in terms of cash flow or the like DocuSigns and stuff, some people just aren't interested. So it might be a slow burner as it sort of moves into later, more IT literate people, without offending anyone there. But yeah.
No. So there's a point well made. And I'm guessing with your client bank, as it grows, Emmelia, is going to be younger people because you're working with sports people, right? So hopefully that tech resistance point isn't too acute for your client bank.
No, not at all. And I would say with generational wealth as well, it's much easier. Everything I do is digital. I don't do anything. It was probably an area that I was going to bring to you guys. What will the next generation of financial planning look like for, I think it's Gen Z, Gen X, millennials. Just from a personal experience, when I recently built a house, I employed professionals through Instagram. That was where I went to vet and look at people.
Wow.
I didn't, I'd go off word of mouth. If there was an architect or a QS or somebody like that, I would go, or a lawyer, for example, I would go off personal recommendations. But generally, where there was a void, how I would vet somebody now is a social media profile. That's what.
Yeah,
that's
like
where I would go.
Bathroom fitter, flooring, all that sort of stuff. It's so visual on social
I'd go
media.
to see, and then, they would demonstrate their work. Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Wow. Just
you're adding value already, Emmelia. Great to have you.
Alan, have you
Carl who?
As an example, have you digitized your future life when you're not here?
Have I? No.
Yeah.
No, not at this stage, and I should do. I should get around it. I mean, I've certainly come across client situations where they have passed away, and we've got a few documents, but we certainly don't have all of them as their advisor, and it's an absolute mess. It's an absolute mess. You've got children, grandchildren sometimes saying,
absolute shambles.
Do you know where dad's this document and that document? So, and I say no, unfortunately not. And we've tried to be more kind of engaged with clients. But it's tricky, and I think this is a generational thing. You're not going to get certain people, certain clients, just immediately to digitize all their documents, scan them, upload them, and then everyone's. As I say, I just think that the biggest thing is. Remember a few years ago, Bruce Willis had a big argument with Apple about all the music that he's bought on iTunes, and they said it's not yours, even though he's paid for it, because he wanted his daughters. He had like tens of thousands of songs. It might be different now with Spotify and streaming. I don't know. But he reckons he bought them. They said legally you're only renting them.
Bruce Willis, Alan.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis.
Why?
The actor.
It was. Bruce Willis. Correct.
Okay.
He had a big legal battle with Apple. It was just, and the whole thing was just about ownership of digital assets after you're dead. So it's an issue. It's worthy of further exploration and debate. This is just a new tool that exists. It's not the only one out there, but it's probably a useful discussion point for some of your clients thinking about planning for life after. All right.
Yeah. Alan's point, Andy, is not the recording artist having a beef. It's the Joe Public who buy music. But
Bruce Willis he spent tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on music on iTunes back in the day. And he just said, well, I want my daughter, I want my children to own this. And they said, no, it doesn't pass across. I don't know how that eventually got resolved. But anyway, it's an increasing thing as more and more of our life and assets are digitized. And, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of kind of crypto and NFTs. These are all digital assets. And, the transfer of ownership of those down the line, it's a mess.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Okay, the next thing on the topical tidbits, Mr. Hart, Quilters have announced some changes to their platform charges.
Yeah, I mean, I don't predominantly use Quilter, but I've got a couple of legacy clients on there for various reasons. They sent me an email the other day about their platform charges being reduced, and I thought they were quite substantial reductions. So I just thought I'd I'd raise it here. Do we think that that's going to be a thing? Platform charges going down. I know Transact have been very proactive in this space ever since they've launched. They launched, purposefully profitable, and then they said, as we scale, we'll reduce the fees, and they've done that. I just thought it was interesting to see that Quilter's substantially reduced their fees, certainly on the lower end clients that they're looking after. On the high end, it seems to be the same sort of fees. So platform fees really being reduced. Any points on that?
I'll just leap in there and say that the Quilters have brought their platform fees down to Hargreaves Lansdown levels. They're still expensive.
I'll just couple of points. When you've got a product or a service which is largely commoditized, which platforms are really, there's none that I don't see that stand out as saying, I don't mind paying a bit extra because this is so good. Then if in any commoditized product or service, it's a race to the bottom on costs. And they're obviously coming up against some competitive pressure. Maybe others have reduced their fees and costs, so they're just trying to keep up with the market. There's more and more assets being placed on platforms. There's still, I don't know what the numbers are, but billions and billions in legacy products that are still being moved across bit by bit from, old Phoenix Life plans, etc. So there's still a lot.
Hundreds of billions.
Yeah, hundreds of billions. So there's still a land grab. There's still a lot of business to get after, and increasingly, advisors are looking at costs and they're saying, well, you're more expensive than somebody else. So it's just, I think there ultimately comes a point at which they can't reduce it any further. You need to have a profit margin. You need to be reinvesting and improving your tech over time. So I think they're getting quite close to that. Unless you go down another route, which is you see in the US, you see firms like Schwab and I think Fidelity, where it's free. Custody and trading is free because they're selling you something else, and they're making a turn on the cash holding, and you could get towards that. But just one thing related to this that I noticed the only kind of newspaper I read is the FT at the weekend, and there was a report in the FT at the weekend about this and they were mainly focusing on DIY investors, and obviously the big daddy in that game is Hargreaves Lansdown, and they are considered to be more expensive nowadays. And so I just thought it was quite intriguing that the report reflected. They said a lot of DIY investors are moving off Hargreaves Lansdown because it's quite expensive. And they highlighted a firm called NetWealth, which I'd heard of before, kind of positioned themselves. I think it's the founder's an ex-Goldman Sachs lady who just felt that they could do a better DIY offering.
You underestimate the power of the dark side.
And they are coming in with platform and funds at about 1%, which I don't think is particularly cheap for no advice. Bundled everything together, just give you a fund and a platform, and that's pretty much it as far as I can see. 1%. I think we can, in certain circumstances, we can offer that ourselves with full financial planning advice for around 1% for certain clients. So, just quite interesting how this stuff is being reported in the national press. There we go.
Emmelia, does your firm and your mother's firm, do you have a preferred platform?
Do you know what? I was actually going to ask the same of you guys then, just listening. We tend to inherit a lot of legacy clients, and so we take on, and I was going to ask, how do you manage that? You talked about Transact. That's come up to me before to do some reading around, but is there a one-stop shop where there's a comparable of platforms and different fees, and what do you guys use for that?
Okay, I'll leap in. I use a service called Advisor Asset, which is quite well known in the IFA community. You pay a monthly subscription, and you can put into there your client profile. So maybe a husband and wife, they've got ISAs and pensions on a platform, and you put the amount in, and then you just run it through Advisor Asset, and it'll just list all the platforms by reduction in yield, basically, which is the first point, just to look at charges. But you can put in things like flexibility. So does this platform allow various decumulation strategies? Does it charge for rebalancing? And Advisor Asset will filter out. Basically, you start off with the answer you want, and you, like all these things, you fiddle with it to give you the answer it wants. But it's very good, and it's about, I can't remember what I pay for it. It's a monthly sub, but I'd start with that one. But I think things like the Langcat, they have the platform analyzer tool, which is very similar, Emmelia, so you can kind of strip out.
I think the problem that I find is the more clients you have with different providers, there's a different level of service wherever you go. And that makes, I know something we're going to talk about later, but that makes any sort of report writing for that client particularly difficult when they've got lots of different legacy products with lots of different providers who all offer a different level of service on their platforms. That's a frustration for me. So I know that you enjoy the simplification of planning, Nick. I know you spoke about that before. And in terms of efficiency of the business, I'm fully on board with that, but that's not how it plays out.
Alan?
Yeah, I think you've got to have a platform strategy that applies to your business. Interesting, Nick, that advisor assisting, as you've described it, I remember looking at that a few years ago. It's almost back to the dark days of what used to be Aquos and Synaptics, whereby you looked at on a client-by-client basis. And theoretically, you can end up with 10 different platforms across your client base, which is not the way I see things. I see platforms as what do you call it, Andy? Plumbing, just plumbing in your business. Yeah, plumbing, and we've got a fairly homogenous client bank. We don't deal with people with tens or hundreds of millions and people with threepence halfpenny. We've got a generic kind of client profile that one or two platforms fit the bill for most of those circumstances. Of course, you get the occasional situation you have to go a bit off piece, but we just believe in understanding that. So we subscribe. Historically, we've subscribed to the Langcat, and that gives us enough ammunition to say, yes, by and large, for most of our clients, this one or two platforms is likely to be the best. And it's very, relating back to what we just said, I think it's very dangerous to look at cost as a key driver. Because really, there's not much difference between one and the other. I think service experience is what it's all about.
Can I just clarify? So I do platform due diligence once a year, and once a year I feed in my typical client profile, typical client age in their 50s, typical pension pot, and just put it in just for the number crunching. I don't do that on a case by case basis. Where tools like Advisor Asset are good, they're for things like pension switching. They have ancillary tools as well. But even that now, I think as long as I've got the charges for the seeding scheme. I don't, do we need to know what the projections are at age 65, at 5, 7 and 9% and all that rubbish and compare? I don't know. Hopefully we've moved on a little bit. Yeah. Okie dokie. Now, Emmelia, the CII, I hope I got this right. The CII 150th birth. Will they get to 151? Years. There's a lot of strife with the CII, isn't there? And why don't you talk about that, Emmelia? Also, I know you do some work with the PFS. So would you mind just expanding on that first, and then quickly talk, and then go on to the CII 150th birthday?
Yeah, of course. So the relationship really was intertwined. I am an active member on the PFS for the Northwest region. I was kind of chucked in by my mum, to be honest, but she said this will be really good. We get involved with a lot of the quarterly meets. We do them locally to us. And I was born into the new professionals role alongside Craig, who's actually left now, Craig Stokes. And a part of my role is to help new entrants. It's not necessarily young. It's anybody that's entering the profession. Find a place at the table, connect with other professionals, understand what events we offer, understand what the PFS can do to help, and understand that they are a separate body to the CII, complementary in a lot of ways, but that they can offer other services. So we went to the CII representing the PFS just to look at how the relationship can help each other. The CII do a lot. They do a lot of events. The 150th birthday was incredibly well organised. It had taken a lot of organisation. We went to one of the chair meetings on the run-up for that, so I understand the work that went in. And they had quite a lot of guest speakers. There was a fantastic poet. I can't remember his name, but I will give you that for the show notes. I think I've got a copy of the poem he wrote. He was a proper mank. He was great. He was really, really northern. But beautifully written for the CII, so it was very special. And then we had there was a round table, there was lots of different insurance institutes, some that were relevant to our profession as well. And Piers Linney was one of the speakers there. He gave a great off-the-cuff, this has been my life. This is where I think Insurance Institute need to keep up. He talked about AI and the advancement in technology. And he was kind of one of the examples he gave. And if I don't relay this, Piers, sorry, as well as you did. But he said, car insurance, where will that be in 10, 20 years' time? Well, who's going to be driving cars? So why are you going to need car insurance? And he just emphasized that this is going to be fast. You need to keep up. If you're left behind, you are going to be left in the dust, kind of thing. So he was great. He's so inspiring as a person. He's done incredibly well, ex-Dragon's Den. So yeah, I try and get involved with both professional bodies as much as I can. I don't know if you guys have any younger, new members to your team. I think you've got Olivia, Alan. Did you post about Olivia?
Yep.
Yeah. So would you guys be chucking your younger members of the team towards the PFS, towards the CII to get involved with these kind of professional bodies? And if not, why?
Short answer for me is yes. Yes, we would. Historically, we've always been members and subscribed to these professional bodies. We were kind of running in the old days, and sort of before your time, I suppose, Emmelia, there was the Institute of Financial Planning, the IFP, and it was such a great learning ground. I mean, I think all of us on this call participated in that, run by an amazing guy called Nick Cann, who sadly had a stroke some years ago, but there was a period of time it was just a place to be. And I learned so much about this concept of real financial planning.
Grab yourself a drink, a very long drink. It's story time with Alan Smith.
No story, really. It was just, I think all of us did. They used the IFP conference down in Celtic Manor in Wales was a sort of annual pilgrimage that we went to, and there was just it was a kind of foundation of a group of inspiring people, and people like me have now sort of come through and are the more mature veterans. But in those days, I was a sort of young guy trying to learn things. So we really embraced that, and we learned about this concept of real financial planning and building cash flow models and all that sort of stuff. And the PFS were always, and the CII are much more kind of technically driven, as I saw it. You had to that's where you got your exams. The IFP was part of the, what do you call it? The body that did they signed off the CFP license, which obviously is a global certificate in financial planning. And the PFS sort of won the game because they went off to I think it's called the Privy Council, and they captured this qualification called the Chartered Financial Planner from under the nose of the IFP. Anyway, it was kind of, if you ever watched Monty Python,
People's Front of Judea stuff.
People's Front of Judea and the Judea's People Front. It was a bit like that, and then ultimately, we as a business had to choose one horse to ride, I suppose, because we ended up being dual members of both. We had to do our annual, our CPD and this certificate and stuff for both of them. Eventually, we said, you know what? And the IFP kind of got consumed by CISI, and at the time, that to me just seemed like a much more kind of technical. They were all about complicated options tradings or something. That was a lot of the stuff I'd read. I know they've improved a lot since then and much more embracing the financial planning. So we've gone down the CII PFS route. All our team, the appropriate members of our team, are members of it. But it's a useful reminder, actually, Emmelia, because we probably don't go to as many events as perhaps we should do. And it's probably a great place to meet nowadays, meet in person. Younger members of the profession, younger members of my team would probably benefit a lot from just getting together with like-minded people like yourself and just sharing thoughts and ideas. So yeah,
I suppose it's developing those, because I know from honesty, people see them as a CPD exercise. They go, they get their hours, they walk away. And it's making sure you can take some of this full fat financial planning, you can take some of the downtime, some of the networking, some of the collaborative working where you sit. And that is what I am pushing for. I find them relatively stiff at the moment. We go, we sit there, we listen to the talks, and we're losing that interpersonal bit, which is the value, where the likes of me that are newer to the industry interrogate the likes of you and sit and ask you all the questions that I want to. So I'm definitely trying to help and support that.
It's that age-old thing, isn't it, with conferences, Emmelia, that the conferences are generally okay. Some are better than Andy's. Is one of the better ones, if not the best one. But it's the stuff in between. It's the breakout sessions. It's when you have a cup of coffee or something, and then you talk. You go and seek out someone in the room who you kind of admire from a distance, and just get a chance to pick his or her brains. That's for the actual sitting down in the auditorium part can be quite tedious. I guess also would you be involved with Next Gen? That would seem to be the. Go on.
I love Next Gen. That's where my journey started. That's where I am pushing Nick through as well. He's doing his exams, not quite aggressively as I attacked my exams, but he's doing exams. My whole journey started with Next Gen. Actually, another incredible financial planning firm, Clearcut, Jane Gow. She runs a financial planning business with her daughters. When we originally started off, she gave us quite a bit of advice, and Adam Owen had come in and given some training, and that was a career. That's how they did their career progression and got their diploma. So I contacted Adam, and I could not fault them. They have grown the business from strength to strength, their offerings there. I was just watching the other day, Dan, I think it's Graham, his last name, had done a few YouTube clips of social media and all of
he does the podcast, doesn't he? He interviews people.
Yeah, he's just and he's so cool. He knows so many technical advances and all these apps, and there's just such a wide offering now for so many people that. So I am also going to their I think it's conference, their awards ceremony. Are you guys going to go?
Yeah, I'm there. It's
Good question.
2 weeks time. 2 weeks time. That's next week, isn't it?
Yes.
Now,
it is.
Yeah, I'm in Manchester for 3 days.
10 days.
Yes, it's next.
So apparently, there's an award for best podcast that we've been shortlisted for.
Yes, congrats.
So don't forget to vote for us.
You're a big influencer within Next Gen. I want you to get influencing, all right? You've already boosted any Next Gen listeners. It's the best place ever, and vote for us, okay?
Yeah, we love Next Gen.
It's Friday the 16th of June, the conference.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Very good.
I actually got shortlisted for an award too, so kudos, guys.
Oh, brilliant!
Wow,
brilliant. Okay, so you met Piers Linney, and you were amazed by his talk at this CII birthday. Following on from that, and the sort of AI theme, which Mr. Magpie can't get rid of at the moment, it's stuck in his beak and it just won't be pulled out. Mr. Smith, you had an AI workshop that I believe was interesting.
You don't throw this together, do you? This is all planned and organised. That's a beautiful segue. I
wish.
You just mentioned my now close personal friend, ex-dragon, Mr. Piers Linney. The last episode of Trap went out. It went out on the day of an AI workshop that I was involved in, and Piers Linney was involved in, and he was co-hosting it together with a guy called Alok Shukla, who I've known for years. Turns out Andy Hart knows him as well, but there you go, small world. Look, it is, of course, it's the current theme. It's the buzzword. Everyone's talking about it, but I think there's a reason that everyone's talking about it. It is transformational. If you spend any time just having a look at what exists currently, what is likely to exist in the next sort of few months, really, it's very interesting, and you can't really avoid it if you want to be successful going forward. So this is a big thing for someone like me to say. I mean, I've been over 30, 35 years in this business. I've attended countless conferences, workshops, days, learning opportunities. I would say, I may have recency bias, but I would say this was the most impactful day I've ever had. I just think it was just an absolute, mind-blowing. I kept on sort of shaking my head and going, my God, because the stuff they were showing and demonstrating, we don't have time to go into it right now, but it was absolutely fascinating. It was amazing. And as a consequence, there's a lot of buzz in the financial planning community about this. Because of all the professions, I think this is one we can really, people who get behind this and embrace artificial intelligence can absolutely leap forward and take. There's so much. I mean, Emmelia, you're learning this now. We will talk about it. There's so much just grunge and gunk in our business. It's just old-fashioned, just manipulating data and looking at boring spreadsheets, which the machines can do in a fraction of the time with a higher degree of accuracy than any human can do. So if it releases us from the sort of the grunt work and frees us to do the stuff that we all love doing and clients frankly prefer us and enjoy it more, which is the human side of it, then fantastic. Why not embrace it? So there's a plan to put together another full day AI workshop specifically for financial planners. So I will obviously, if anyone just follows me on LinkedIn or Twitter via this podcast, I'll be posting information about it. I've got a meeting later on this week to agree and discuss dates and opportunities. And so anyone who's interested to get in touch and get along to that day. Okay. Anything else to be said?
Good. What's the final topical tidbit we have, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, just on the subject of in-person live and in-person events. My other podcast, my award-winning podcast. This is the soon-to-be award-winning podcast,
Bullshit.
But my other award-winning podcast,
Bullshit.
Bulletproof Entrepreneur. Check it out. We are doing a live and in-person event. First time I've ever done it. 26th of June, Central London, with another close personal friend of mine, Henry Dimbleby, who's the founder, obviously part of the Dimbleby
gang
broadcasting dynasty. And also the founder of Leon, the fast food chain, who had an exit last year for £100 million. He and I are going to be having a sort of fireside chat, conversation, podcast episode, live and in person, expecting over 100 people to be there. So if you are interested and you're in London at the end of June, check it out. You're very welcome to come along.
Where's it going to be, Alan? Is it homegrown?
Yep. Homegrown. Private members club for entrepreneurs. Nick and I are both members.
This is true. This is very true. Alan, do you realize I've kept a log over the last few months? You've actually got 3,648 close personal friends. How do you keep them all in front of mine?
Yeah, that's just it.
Right. Okay. I think we've given those topical tidbits a damn good thrashing, and it's time to move on to the meat and potatoes of the show. Emmelia, you're valued as a guest for numerous reasons. One of which is that you bring a youthful perspective to the show, because we're old lags and we've been at this game for a while. And you are going to have some questions addressed in the meat and potatoes, things that are front of mind for you as you pursue your journey into this brilliant thing of ours, this grand profession of financial planning, or full fat financial planning. I like the way you use that phrase. That's one to cling on to. So, 3 points that you raise: global equities. Number 2, report writing. Number 3, the decumulation phase in retirement, which all of these, in their own way, are massive. And we could probably do a whole meat and potatoes on each section, but we're going to address these as we go along. Now, just forgive me, Emmelia, because I'm going to read out what you put in. And these are your words, not mine. Your email vomit, your word vomit, where you just typed away and sent an email.
That's fine.
So global equities, index tracking, got it. Simple wealth, inevitable wealth, the Nick Murray book that's client facing, refers to 5 core types of equities to be included. Yeah, value, growth, large cap, small cap, alternatives, blah, blah, blah. When you refer to this as being the wealth creator for clients and 100% equity invested with a small bit in cash for reserve funds, how it's an easy statement to agree with, but how do you go about doing that? How do you find those funds or fund? I'm left in the dark. I'm being you, Emmelia. I'm left in the dark. What basis are you selecting funds? What platforms do you use? What are your criteria for selecting? And what do you do with CGT, ISA allowances, rebalancing, and so forth? My God, there's just a myriad of questions off there. Just coming back to the main theme of this first point in the meat and potatoes, the global equity, how do you find the funds or fund? We've all been on journeys. We've all, I've been an IFA since 2001. Alan's been an IFA similar time period, 2004. And Andy was once a polyester suited mortgage advisor, reeking of desperation. But have you got your advice? Have you been signed off now, Andy?
Yeah, I've got my
CAS, still training.
CAS, competent advisor status. CAS.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, he's got overconfident advisor status.
Yeah. Let's not go down there. And we've all in our journeys, we've all sort of made this. We've all been down. It's a remarkably similar, actually, kind of progression where you start off with thinking that you're going to be a fund picker, and that you want to have a portfolio of funds where you have your global small cap and maybe your value funds over there, and have some emerging markets. There used to be these things called BRIC funds: Brazil, Russia, India, China, which were the kind of really cool emerging market funds about 15 years ago, and you'd have portfolios. And then after a while, when you realize that financial planning is front and center, and actually the financial plan determines the level of growth that clients need to get on their saved pots, on their capital, you start to think, well, actually, as long as the clients pick up the broad market returns, this whole pursuit of alpha and outperformance is utterly irrelevant. And then you tag onto that the behavioral side that, okay, once you accept, or once the clients accept they need to pick up the broad market returns and we're not going for outperformance, our role as financial planners is to make sure clients are always invested to pick up those returns, because market timing, dipping in and out, is a surefire way to poverty. You kind of just, you refine it. And yes, Emmelia, I'm a simple soul, and I really have simplified my investment proposition now, to use a horribly overused cliche. And this is not advice to anyone listening who's not in this thing of ours. And I know members of the public do listen to this. I basically now, for most of my clients, have a one fund solution. I won't name the fund, but I mean, it's one fund that gives massive global exposure, has value exposure, has a small cap exposure, has emerging markets, has about 13,000 of the great companies in the world in it. And that's what I use. And it's passive, I guess. There's no star fund manager running it. They just buy world markets. They buy world capitalism. They buy everything that we spend our money on every day. It's like the shopping list fund. Okay. So I say to clients, if you go into this fund, everything you spend your money on, you now own a fraction of that brand in this fund. And every time you spend money there, you're driving up their profits and dividends. You're just buying the world market. Don't sweat it. But it took me an awful long time to get there. And I think you've got to be relatively self-confident to go to clients and say, yeah, this is our investment proposition. It's not particularly important, actually. The plan's important. But if you're interested, this is the fund. Go have a look at it if you want to. That's what I've done.
I think that's how I shortened that whole big word vomit. Is I get the theory and I agree with it. I agree that that's where value is. That's where growth is. That's how you keep in pace with inflation. But implement it, especially somebody that's going through, I'm doing report writing. I'm trying to figure out the platforms that I like. I'm trying to figure out my way of doing it. That is a big statement. And that then comes with lots of unpacking, like I said, about if I'm taking this into managing it myself and not using a discretionary fund manager, which we may or may not do with other clients, I then take on a lot more responsibility. And that's how I need to almost learn how that is done. I don't know whether the platforms do or your CGT and use those allowances or your ISA allowances. How do you navigate that? Because to me, that just looks like an admin headache. That's kind of a different. So the first point is, how do you pick the? Are you asking funds? How do I justify if I go down this one fund route? Say, I'm not suggesting you will, but if you did, are you asking how would I justify that? No. So as your confidence grows, and I understand equity. Okay, so I figure out a way and I find my fund, but then I'm taking this on. So every year I need to make sure that I'm using my allowances. I'm using my CGT. I'm using my. Do you actually manually do this, or do the platforms do this for you? I might seem really naive here, but this is just not something I've experienced because we've not had products where we've needed to do that because they've been pensions or so forth.
I mean, I would when you're doing your annual platform due diligence, or however often you feel you should do it, but annual is more than enough. You want to make sure they've got a competent capital gains tax calculator, a working capital gains tax calculator. That's always been a key driver. It's now even more important, obviously, because the CGT allowances are basically miserable going forward. Again, not advice to anyone that's listening, but Transact have I think it's really good. Transact will tell you what the pregnant CGT liabilities are, and then once you've sold out of the various funds, they will give you the CGT calculation, and it's all online. But some platforms, I mean, I'm not going to denigrate because they might have been better, but I know ones, platforms that use the FNZ underlying software, which is a good deal of them. I've had some ropey CGT experiences. So absolutely, I use a platform where I'm confident the CGT counts are pretty accurate. Emmelia, and that's a big driver for me. And just tying that into the one fund simple philosophy, one fund to fuel all the pots. If you've got one fund, it makes the CGT calculation a little bit easier because you're not working it out over 5-6 different funds. But yeah, absolutely. Make sure the platform that you use that you're comfortable with has a functional CGT. Andy, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think it's the exception, not the rule, that platforms have a decent CGT calculator. As advisors, we can get ourselves in a bit of knots actually looking at CGT. I know I've had a couple of phone calls with you, Nick, recently about some of the changes that are coming in and how does it play out and stuff. Transact has a great CGT calculator, and you can input all of the purchase values when you transfer assets across. So you need to get that from the provider that you're leaving from. The other question you mentioned, I mean, I similar to Nick, have been on a journey with investment management. I mean, luckily, I only spent a year of my career picking funds, and then some bright spark said to me, why don't you go and see David Jones from Dimensional? We'll be able to help you out. And then I ended up in my polyester suit in Down Street in Mayfair, sitting there being educated about investments with David Jones. And he was telling me some crazy things like, let's say you're at a village fete and you've got to guess the weight of the bull. Did you know that the average would be closer than all the individual guesses? Just sort of crazy thought experiments I was just sort of nodding along to. Anyway, I went on the courses. I think it was a 2-day course that they ran. So I predominantly use Vanguard and Dimensional. Now, I mean, I'm not averse to using providers like BlackRock, like L&G on their sort of HSBC on their sort of index funds, but I find that Vanguard and Dimensional do all I need as such. Massive fan of Vanguard, massive fan of Dimensional. Just thought sort of the ethos and the sort of principles of the companies. So I don't know if that's giving you a bit of an insight, but yeah, over to you, Alan.
Yeah, you mentioned outsourcing to discretionary fund managers, and that's, I guess, all of us have maybe. Well, we've done that. Here we go.
I don't know if that drop works.
That's a new one. That lasted a bit too long. What you find is over the years, that's kind of an elegant solution for the advisor, because that's what we used to think. We'll do all the planning and advice and everything else, but we're no experts at the investment management piece. All these sort of sharp suited, people with double barrel names, they will be great at it. The reality is they're not. And so we explore, but on an evidence-based basis, analyzing what the actual returns were. Once you layer in all the different sort of costs and charges, it doesn't make sense. So therefore, you've got to work out, and I agree with you, Emmelia, you've got to have a kind of an elegant, workable solution. Because if you begin to bring this in-house and suddenly you're just running yourself around in circles, trying to do sort of portfolio management on a client-by-client basis, that's not going to be workable either. So you need a structure and a strategy. Andy mentioned it already. I've mentioned it on this podcast before. I think the best kept secret in investment management, contact Dimensional Fund Advisors and ask to go along on their 2-day Foundations of Investment conference. It will blow your mind. You will learn so much, and they will guide you and help you. Now, beyond that, there's a number of different solutions. You can do that in-house. You can build this in-house. You would get confidence more and more confident as you understood it. There are also there are a few, not many, high quality outsourced discretionary services, Timeline being one of them. Timeline offer broadly similar investment propositions to ours. They use Dimensional, they use Vanguard. They've got, if it appeals to you, they've got ESG versions of the portfolios. Don't see anything, Nick. And it's all super low cost because they've negotiated institutional terms. So that might be a sort of at least a stepping stone. Speak to someone, and other discretionary managers do exist, but they're worthwhile exploring. But it's a journey you go on, and I think all of us, you end up with a simple, effective, low cost, sensible solution. But you've got to be confident you can manage it in house. So look, if us lot can do it, then you certainly can.
I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased that a year into my career, I turned the entire active management industry noise off. And then I could focus on, obviously, exams, financial planning, building a business, marketing, client-focused stuff. I mean, Jesus Christ, I dread to think how much time is wasted and it adds zero
When
value.
I used to
It
show up,
extracts value.
you go to a presentation. It's XYZ fund manager with their views on the global equity markets and whether the direction of the dollar sterling. It's just utter nonsense. And my God, it's just such a waste of everyone's time. So if you meet, as you say, I get these emails, and you can just quickly press delete. Don't need to think about it anymore because we've found the secret sauce as much as it can exist. There's nothing's perfect, but this is the least bad option.
The worst thing about those conferences is at the end of the talk, 3 or 4 people would ask a genuine question. It's like the person's just lied from the stage, and now you're asking them a serious question. I mean, are you insane? Like, just get out. Anyway,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I subscribe, Emmelia, to some newsletters from wealth management firms just for the giggles, really, because they come through once a week, and they go on and on and on about this stuff. And I'm thinking some poor sap has actually sat down and gone to FE Analytics and printed off all these graphs and really thinks that they know about the China macro widget sector rotation into value.
And what happened that week?
They're deranged.
It's back to
it's nuts.
It's amazing what someone will think when their salary depends on it. They genuinely believe it.
But the vast majority, from what I've seen, of money is managed on that basis with those people who think they've got a view. As we said at last episode, the one before, still, at best, 20% of investments is managed on this sort of embracing the philosophy that we all embrace. So. It is a differentiator. And I think also if you're not quite there yet on that strategy, Emmelia, it's a very powerful message to your clients. First of all, it would theoretically significantly reduce their costs. And it's a much more thoughtful, they use the phrase evidence-based, but it's the sort of thing that the smart people are doing. I can tell you there's no professor of economics, people who already understand this, who outsources their own personal wealth to discretionary managers to ask them sort of play the markets. Those with kind of academic rigor in their careers and their history and their research, they embrace this stuff. So it's almost like you're inviting your clients into the secret society of smart investing. And I think it's a very compelling message.
I think it was Jeremy Siegel who said that journalists write about active funds all day and then by night stick their money in passive funds.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, just linking us all, talking about my reading at the weekend, the guy, what's his name, Stuart, the ex... What's the the guy, but he's the
HSBC guy.
HSBC guy. He writes a monthly column in the FT, and he wrote it this Stuart Kirk. Yeah, he wrote it this weekend, and the headline is, and this is a guy who spent his entire career in active management. Headline is: active management doesn't work. So that should be good enough for the rest of us.
Okay, a closed question, Emmelia. In the interest of time, have you investigated Dimensional at all?
I am speaking to Elliot. Yeah, I was meant to go on their 2-day course in June, but I had a few things crop up, so I couldn't get down to London. So I think I'm going to go on one in a few weeks' time or a few months' time.
You were busy building your house, were you?
I'm just a busy bee with lots of things. I've booked to come see you, Andy, so you better not disappoint.
To what?
Cost me an arm and a leg. That free ticket went within seconds. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
There you go. You've got someone coming to your. That's good.
I've actually sold out of Hum. I've got 10 reassuringly expensive tickets left if people really want to go and are hit by FOMO. So yeah, I've sold out Hum London. So all good. Sorry, back to you, Nick.
Well done. No, well done.
Good.
Yes,
good.
That's brilliant. You mentioned rebalancing. I mean, again, don't sweat it, Emmelia. I mean, I rebalance once a year. There's evidence saying that once a year is probably okay. Some platforms now will do automatic rebalancing for you. So Fundment will do it on a tolerance basis. If it drifts off by whatever parameter you set, I think 10% is the default. Don't sweat it. Most of what we do, and I'm learning this as well, when we start up, we think everything is science. I've got all the exams. This is all hard stuff. Most of what we do actually is art. You have to know the science. You have to know the rules. You have to know the tax regulations and everything else. But most of it is art, and you cannot quantify what we do, which is why the regulator will never quite get what we do, because the regulator wants to prescribe everything. You can't do it. We're dealing with human beings, and a lot of it is vague. And clients, the question we should be asking clients is, what's your tolerance for ambiguity? Yeah. Okay, you're coming with us, with sports people, you're coming us on potentially a 6-decade, 7-decade journey. We don't know how anything's going to pan out over that time. We can just make a best guessed informed plan for you and then tweak the plan as we go along. But if you want certainty, die now. That's the only thing. So that's the rebalancing. That's what I would say on rebalancing. Sorry, I'm kind of going through this because we're 54 minutes into this shambolic 21st episode. Report writing. So Emmelia, I'm talking in your voice here, so do forgive me. Report writing in capital letters. This is my bugbear. Yeah, well, hallelujah, join the club. And it's currently very time consuming. Videos and other systems to communicate with clients. But do you avoid written reports entirely? Okay, well, let's just stop there. No, you can't avoid written reports, certainly, and we all have to give advice. We all have to give it in a permanent format. And I certainly give my advice in PDF form to clients, but I am using Loom more and more. I know Alan is big on Loom, both for external
That's the videos.
Yeah, it's the videos. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a nice way of, rather than typing out a lengthy, the last thing people want in their lives is another bloody Slack message or email or what have you. But if you can send a very...
But they want a video of your face, Nick, in the room.
Well, not really. I do. Thank you for that. I do make it as small as I possibly can on the video. I minimize it down and say, get my shining chrome down out of it. But it just, you can talk for 60 seconds and have a backdrop of whatever, maybe the cash flow, and just to recap to people, rather than typing out a war and piece email, just be creative with it. But you absolutely have to give written advice and you have to do it. Do you have fact find documents? Okay, I'll go here and then someone can jump in because I'm talking quite a bit. Your compliance people will say, oh yeah, you do the fact find. And when you got that nailed down, then you give the advice. Well, that's rubbish. The fact find is an organic document. It's always being updated, certainly through the onboarding process. Clients will say, oh yeah, I've got this pot over here. I've got this personal pension with Mercer's and it's worth 350 grand. And you scribble it down, okay, on the fact find. And then it turns out 2 months later, what they have is a transfer value from Mercer's worth 350 grand that they got a few years ago, but they don't know. So you're always adapting the fact find. But yeah, I have a Word document, a simple 3-page Word document, and I just type into it as and when the facts change. When I give advice, I'll then print off a PDF of that fact find. So it's locked at that moment in time. And that goes in the compliance folder along with that bit of advice. But the fact find's organic. It's always evolving. Clients are always finding things they forgot about, or they don't know what, we use all this jargon. You ask them a question, how many money purchase pension schemes have you got? They're going, what? So it's got to be adaptive. The FCA doesn't tell you what a good report is. No, it doesn't. Soft facts. I had a FCA audit a few years ago, as did Mr. Hart. And one of the things that got me through it, amazingly, without any issues at all, was the fact that my suitability reports, I go heavy on the soft stuff, the background to the inquiry, what are your key concerns and so forth. And I don't dwell on the hard facts in the advice report. I'm doing a lot of talking here. My final thing, my advice reports are about 4 pages long, and then a whole host of appendices at the back. So this is what an ISA is. This is what a pension is. Even though you can Google this shit, I've got to put it in here, but let's stick it at the back so you don't get bored and
swearing.
End things. Swearing. Well, you did 2 F-bombs last time, Mr. Hart. So guys, help me out here. What do you do on the report writing?
I'll chip in here. Yeah. So I've started to do Loom videos for my power planner, which is working really well. I've got an outsourced power planner. They are amazing. I don't share who they are, because they'll get too busy and then just offer really bad service to me. That's generally what happens with outsourced people. So they are fantastic. Yeah, Loom videos, I'm a big fan of that. We have to write written reports. Obviously, it's a regulatory requirement. Fact finding, I use the original Voyant fact find, and then I upload all the information into Voyant. That's updated all the time. I export the advisor fact find. They've got a new document, actually. Have you seen it, Nick? It's called Plan Assumptions. It's a pretty decent export report. It's mainly for us firms rather than clients. It's quite detailed. Like a client will be a bit confused with it. So it's constantly being updated. The annual suitability is sort of factored into that. And it's all around, full financial planning. Hopefully things like AI are going to help us out with these report writing, but we're still beholden to these legacy companies that just take ages to do things. I mean, I'm switching one fund from one provider and they want a 13-page printed form with the wet signatures. And it's a Neil Woodford fund that was left on a platform because I didn't want to move it, but now we have to move it. And it's going to, I dread to think how many hours is spent within my firm to deal with this one fund being transferred from an old provider to Transact. The old provider wants a 13-page physical form in the post wet signature. It's insane. Anyway, Alan?
Not much more to add, really. I believe in as Steve Jobs once said, begin with the customer, then work your way back. So there are some things that we have to legally do, but how does it sort of land in your clients' sort of in their view? Because these long, and they are 10, 12 pages long suitability reports. In my experience, very few people actually read them thoroughly. But
no one reads them.
It's no well. We've had a couple of clients that read page 17, Alan. This I haven't read it. So, what do you mean? What do you mean by engineers and lawyers? Yeah. So that's why the video things can be useful. You just simply and we would generally try to post. We use a portal, so we write the suitability report. We post it on their portal. Quick video. Look, it's up there. It's in the portal. You get access to it. But what it says is this, and this in a verbal. And people will certainly watch a 2-3 minute video far sooner than they will read a long verbose document. And we, naming software, we use a system currently called Genovo, which is designed for writing suitability reports. I don't want to sort of put them down too much. I think they're the best of a bad bunch, really. I don't think any of these systems are good. And yes, all roads currently lead back to AI being able to build these things on a highly personalized basis. Once we put the stuff that we have to disclose, put that in, and then personalize them using sort of modern technology. But it's a real pain. Do you know what I think when I'm reading your notes here, Emmelia? Just interesting. Us old lags on this group, and our learned friend from Ireland as well. We've all got the curse of knowledge, really, because I'm looking at this and think, well, just because over the years, I kind of you build up experience, build up knowledge, as Nick has alluded to earlier. There's some things which are important, you must spend some time on, and others which is it's just a kind of a rule of thumb, or just be sensible. I'm looking at your specific questions. I'm just thinking, where do people like young planners coming through? Where do you learn from? Where do you really get into the weeds of these things and have conversations like this? We will simply not be able to do this justice in the time we've got here, because each one of those could be an hour, if you like. So I think there seems to be a need for more practitioner-led information, training, advice, something like that. Maybe we should do a live, in-person, full-day trap event one day. Get everyone to share our knowledge and wisdom.
Called In the Weeds.
Yeah, deep in the weeds.
I think that is the point, though, isn't it? That I'm coming in, trying to find my feet, looking and taking lots of knowledge from you, and then you guys throw out more books to read. So I read the books, and they've got concept in the books, and I'm like, what's left and what's right anymore? I don't know, and I'm trying to make sense of it all. But the knowledge you have is invaluable, and you will probably exit the profession in another 3 or 4 months. You'll retire and grow old, and it'll all be lost. Wait. Yeah. All of that wisdom will be lost, and the likes of me have to figure it out again. So there's definitely transfer there.
It's a good point. There needs to be something, because I mean, I grew up. I think Nick and I certainly worked for big corporations. We did get some decent training in house back in the day. That's far less prevalent. Most financial planning companies, most of them, with a couple of exceptions, are small businesses, and no one's really got the time or attention to build a training program or to teach all this stuff in great detail. And yes, you learn on the job, but it's a far longer journey to learn on the job when you could have an ability for knowledge transfer earlier on. It's a good point, and we need to explore how we can help that.
Just on that point, I would say I obviously work with my mum, who is an incredible mentor, 30 odd years in the profession. Love working alongside her, but she is my only person to bounce off. She's and everything that she's done isn't necessarily correct. Likewise with you guys, not everything you do I will necessarily think is the right way to do it. But the point being is you you bounce the ideas. I mean, that's the point of the podcast, right? You bounce around the ideas. You can take them apart if you feel, but largely there's a better way to approach things. I was reading The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes.
Good book.
He was,
have that on my desk.
he was really emphasizing training. Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he was just saying about training, it's overlooked. This needs to be done routinely, regularly. Everybody needs to be efficient. Otherwise, you will never be the ultimate sales machine. So,
Well, relating it back to your sports thing, there's not a sports team that doesn't train relentlessly. Elite sports teams are always training.
I think the journey you're going on, Emmelia, is very typical of anyone who's seeking excellence. You clearly want to become a great financial advisor, and it's no different to what the journey everybody goes on. And the challenge is, at the moment, you need to learn as much as you can. The real skill is unlearning. You probably heard me talk about this before. So you want to take in as much as you can, and then over time you just trim and then you shrink your circle of competence. Like at the moment, I've just got the answer immediately when I sit down with clients. That doesn't mean we don't go on a bit of a journey, bit of a dance.
Andy, the ultra crepidarian Andy. He knows about everything, Andy. Can't be told anything. His name is Andrew Hart. Andrew Hart!
What a voice.
Okay, so just on that, what you're doing I think is great. Learn as much as you can, and then the trick is to unlearn. But there is no shortcut. To achieve something great, there is no shortcut. So you have to go on a bit of a long, windy journey.
10,000 hours, right?
I mean, you can shortcut the journey like you're doing, consuming a lot of stuff. And having your mum as a mentor, friend, colleague is absolutely invaluable. I know you're sort of seeking more as such, but wow, your mum, 30 years in the profession, and, I don't know her, but I'm assuming she's decent. I mean, the key to being successful in this business is being in this business. The longer you stay in this business, the more successful you be. And she's been in it for 30 years. So, wow.
Okay, Trap Pack. Listen, we're time is bloody racing by. We're having a good thing. Third point of the meat and potatoes, Emmelia, that you wrote is the decumulation stage. Sorry, just quickly closing on the report writing. It is your bugbear, and because you're forming a business and storming, you're going to be taking on lots of clients and be giving lots of advice at the start, which will mean lots of report writing. And there's no way around it. That will taper off as your business matures, and you focus more on looking after the clients you've already got than onboarding the new clients, which is a pain for everybody, and it's just the price of admission at the moment. Decumulating clients. Matthew Jarvis delivering tremendous value. Guardrails. How do you approach clients who are decumulating and equity invested? How do you approach clients who, even when you have broken down what volatility is, and the risk to capital is the value being eroded, not the volatility of the markets, those people who still want a lower risk exposure, I don't take them on board, Emmelia. The key message is about the risk to your purchasing power being eroded by inflation, and everything else is noise. Volatility is your friend, and if they don't get it or they push back at the prospecting stage, they don't get on the arc. The easiest way to keep the loons out of your life is not to let them into your life in the first place, and just have a ruthless onboarding mechanism. Emmelia, what do you think about that?
So I kind of see that in two parts. One is decumulating clients, and when we've had a period of volatility and declines in the market for the last 2 years, where everything's just been a little bit messy, how do you approach decumulation there when it is potentially the only source of income for a client? How are you safeguarding the returns that you aren't eating into the capital too much to continue their income?
I'll just throw in my two pence. This is the essence of real financial planning. It's matching. It's liability matching. If you know the client needs to have £50,000 a year to support their lifestyle with a specific time horizon, and you've adjusted for inflation, and you've built a really granular, high quality financial model, financial plan, then in our opinion, you're keeping your assets you're going to be spending over the next 2 or 3 years in non-volatile assets, which is predominantly cash. And yes, you're taking a hit that is going to be suffering at the hands of inflation, but you're going to be spending it pretty soon. You don't have the luxury of taking or of embracing short-term market volatility because you don't want to, because the client's going to be spending it. So identifying capital expenditure, like I want to buy a new car next year, I want to go on a massive holiday, and I want to, I just want to enjoy the fruits of my labor and enjoy sort of a nice lifestyle. That is the essence. And back to Nick's point, we do apply science, but then there's a kind of rule of thumb and a conversation and managing it across the client's lifestyle. There is no perfect solution, but with the benefit
Can
of...
I ask you off the back of that?
Yeah.
When you've done decumulating then, and obviously you use Voyant or you use a financial planning cash flow model, I've not had the experience where I've gone, do you know what, Voyant was there or thereabouts. I was about right. The markets did do this and the pot was about this in 5 years' time. Have you found that your financial planning on cash flow has matched largely how you thought it was going to go?
Andy.
I'll chip in for that, yes. It's scary how accurate I am. If I went back 10 years ago in 2013... Oh, honestly, me and Nick talk about this a bit, don't we, Nick?
Yeah, me and Nick.
So if I went back to 2013 and where I told a client they would be in 2023, weirdly, I'm not that far off. It's scarily accurate. Sometimes I have to triple check it and go, the liquid assets that close to what I projected. So I use simplistically cautious, deterministic growth rates and Voyant. And as a real financial advisor, building real plans for real clients and monitoring those real outcomes, it's scarily accurate. Have you found that, Nick?
Yeah, I have. Things just tend to. It's a funny thing, and I'm not religious or anything, but I think the universe responds. If you put a plan in place and you do those things in that plan that you should be doing, saving and behaving properly and not disinvesting, do you know what? The plan tends to pan out over time. It just kind of happens, Emmelia.
Well, don't forget that you should be doing this and reviewing it once every 12 months at least anyway. So you're always course correcting. Your plan will be inaccurate for a period of time. So you're course correcting. Can I just throw one other thing in here, which I just thought of, and we do come back to our sort of financial planning coaching god in the form of Nick Murray. Nick Murray is very, very, very strong on a concept he calls doing lifeboat drills. You're telling your clients, if you tell Nick Murray, I've had this client, he got upset by the volatility and so he's fired me or something, Nick Murray will shout at you, you stupid person, won't he? And he's done that in his newsletter. You stupid boy. So you run a lifeboat. You run a lifeboat drill. We're saying to your client, the client, when this is not a maybe, this is a definite. There will be periods in our relationship with the capital value of the short term of your retirement fund will be lower than the last time we met. It is a guarantee. So we're going to act out what we'll do. Let's just kind of role play it. It's a lifeboat drill. I mean, you've got an ocean going liner. They do lifeboat drills. What would happen? They're hoping the ship doesn't sink, but if it ever does, we've rehearsed it. And you create your kind of the financial plan added to a lifeboat drill. That is your North Star. And in those moments, because clients are uniquely human, as we are, and everyone gets a bit worried and everyone gets a bit scared because they've been absolutely bombarded by the negative events, world service, the news, throwing negative stuff. We say, remember, we built the North Star. We did the lifeboat drill. What does the plan say? What does the plan tell us we will do in the inevitable experience that the markets are down? We will do nothing. We'll adjust. We'll rebalance. We'll look to our cash assets and we'll carry on. Remember that? Yes. Good. So you've got to plan ahead for it.
I think it's important to revisit that or bang on about that a lot in the welcome meeting. So I'm all about generally the market goes up about 75% of the time, down about 25% of the time. These are good odds. At least once a year, the market will decline from a high point to a low point of minus 14%. Just banging on about these things. So they're going into it with their eyes wide open. There's nothing worse than the client throwing in a grenade every so often, as in an email. It takes them 3 seconds to write between the car and the train station. It takes you 3 hours to freaking deal with. So the less grenades you can get from your clients, the better. I mean, just the low friction. A client could send you a WhatsApp. What's happening to my portfolio? And you're thinking, is this something important to deal with? It's just such low friction. So anything important needs to be a face-to-face meeting. But in the welcome meeting, I really do bang on about the high-level information around the markets. Interestingly, Emmelia, you've been predominantly, I think, only in the profession for a couple of years. So you've had declining sideways markets for 2 years, which is good. You earn your golden coins during the declines and the down times. During the good times, I mean, any old schmuck can sound pretty intelligent in front of clients, as we've all experienced during the good times.
This is true.
Yeah, even Nicholas Lincoln.
I think that just just close exactly. Just closing on. Thank you for that. Just closing on this. The decumulation. I don't call it decumulation. I call it the spending phase. Decumulation is one of those horrible words that nobody outside of what we do understands. It's the spending stage, and this is not new. This is not have a couple of years worth of living expenses in cash. If it's within your pension fund, say if it's outside of the pension fund, have put the max you can into premium bonds, husband and wife, 100 grand. If the markets are going down, we stop the withdrawals from investment portfolio and we lean on that. Most bear markets are over within about 36 to 40 months, okay, peak to trough. As soon as it goes back up again, we start spending. But again, it's just the art part of it, and having.
And you then replenish that on the years of good you take from.
Well,
that's just to
the fact is the markets recover. If the markets decline, they tend to recover as aggressively and more. And actually, you never need to replenish that pot because the markets go up most of the time anyway, and they go up and up and up until you have a long time until the next dip. And actually, the portfolio has recovered so much. But if you wanted to, if it made you feel better, you could strip some of that later growth out, put it back into premium bonds. But the chances are the portfolio is recovered to such a degree, you don't need to have that 2 year living expense bucket. Really, that it shouldn't be needed. But you can do that, and more importantly, if it makes the clients feel comfortable and it will keep them mainly invested. By having that little safety blanket there, then do it. Because the idea, we're all very dogmatic and driven, and we have our beliefs, but ultimately, you want the clients to be comfortable and to remain invested. So if having a little pot there, safety pot there, keeps them on track, crack on and do it. Listen, gents and lady guest, we're at 1 hour 15 minutes. I think we're going to skip because there must be something wrong with the traffic around Watford. The postie not turned up with her bulging sack. So I think we should go straight to Culture Corner. Are we okay with that?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Okay, let's go through this. Mr. Smith, the Scott Galloway podcast with Ryan Holiday.
God, another close personal friend of mine.
Friend of yours, isn't it?
Professor Scott
789.
No, I met him. If anyone knows, Professor Scott Galloway, Prof G. I've mentioned before, I've been lurking around the streets of the West End of London, where he's relocated to Marylebone. And I saw him at lunch with Ruth, another advisor, a few weeks ago. And Scott Galloway went in, and I went up and accosted him and said, "Can I have a selfie, please?" And he told me where to go. But he was a gentleman. Anyway, I am a big fan.
I think that week, Alan, in his blog, he was talking about fame and being approached by randoms in the street. Literally the week.
Random weirdos.
Yeah. Exactly right. In his weekly newsletter, just come out, he said, people come up and approach me in the street, but he said they're always very, very positive and kind and all that. So no, he was good before he told me where to go. He's got a podcast which I listen to every week, and it's like a lot of podcasts. There's some episodes are better than others. The one out this week or last week, he interviews Ryan Holiday. I don't know if any of you come across Ryan Holiday. Andy probably will have done. Ryan Holiday is he studies the Stoics. If you know the Stoics, the kind of ancient wisdom, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and others. And there are so many lessons from this ancient wisdom that apply to us today. Ryan Holiday has got a new book out, and it's and this might appeal to you as well, Emmelia. All of us on this call are parents. And he's got Stoicism for parents. Some of the things if you got young little kids which drive you nuts sometimes, but there's an approach you take. So it's a really nice interview that Scott Galloway does with Ryan Holiday, and he talk about Stoicism as it in the modern world and how it particularly relates to parenting. Well worth checking out. Thank you.
I'm
6 days into potty training twins. Will the book be able to assist with that, Alan?
Yeah. It will. You should get the book. Listen to it.
They've mastered the number ones and not mastered the number twos. I wish it was the other way around. Hey ho.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing
TMI?
Okay, my culture corner is this book must be well known actually, because I think Dan Solin is well known, and I must have heard it from someone here or someone maybe at a peer group.
Yeah,
down the line. But Ask How to Relate to Anyone by Dan Solin, which I'm reading the Kindle version, I think. Really good. I know that Al and I are big fans of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which is the preeminent self-help, self-improvement book, and everything stems from that. Ask How to Relate to Anyone by Dan Solin. It's like an updated version of that book, really. And it's just a really, and I would suggest getting copies of that for your staff, for your family, or what have you, because it'll help your human interactions. Believe it or not, it's helped mine, but I'm a work in progress. Going on to the next culture corner, Mr. Hart, Govinda Bogle.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of culture corners. I can't get enough of this guy. Govinda Bogle is a modern day sort of philosopher. He was on the Chris Williamson podcast 3 times. He's on another podcast called The Seen and the Unseen, 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Just check him out. I mean, his story is fantastic. It's a superb podcast. Following on for self-help books, there's a book by the School of Life. I'm a huge fan of the School of Life. I believe they're based around Holborn, and they do sort of live events, and they also do a lot of materials and books. They got a great book called Arguments, and it's a really small book, and it describes the 20 types of argument. And when you're reading it, it's not new stuff that you don't know, but the way it sort of crystallizes all this information in your brain, it's really, really useful. Certainly if you're in a relationship, which everybody on the call is, and people listening to this probably will be, it's very interesting. Yeah, it's just called Arguments, and it's the 20 different types of arguments. It's a really small book. You go through it in probably 1 or 2 sittings. But yeah, I check out all the stuff from the School of Life. So check it out, the School of Life. They've got amazing videos on YouTube. And they've got loads of card games and stuff that you can buy online that I've bought and sort of done with friends and family and maybe a couple of clients. So, yeah, School of Life is a huge recommendation. Back to you, Lick.
Thank you very much. If there's one thing the Trap Back don't need, it's a lesson in how to argue. we have it down to an art form, but so that's great stuff. Emmelia, anything to throw in?
I just read everything you send me and my AF1 textbook, so my life's really not very exciting. Yeah, nothing too crazy there, but I'm reading The Ultimate Sales Machine. I just finished Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth on holiday, and Delivering Massive Value was the audiobook I was listening to.
What did you think of Simple Wealth? What did you think of Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray? Is that your first Nick Murray book?
Yeah, first one. It was really hard to get hold of as well, actually. It took ages. Yeah, it is. It was really good. I like it. Like I was saying, the theory around equity investment, and that's where I brought some of the concepts for that question that he kind of just sees 5. And he actually talks about, and I don't know whether I'm being a bit controversial here, Nick, but he talks about over-investing and having too much diversification. And it made me think about some of the funds that I've looked at where you've got tens of thousands of shares, and his comment there. And then I was like,
Can I interject? I think my record. No, I know he's talking about where advisors were to have like 6 or 7 or 8 funds, thinking they're diversified, and what you've actually got is massive overlap within those funds. Okay. So you haven't got diversification in the sense you've got thousands and thousands of great companies. You've got funds that are investing in the same great companies and actually aren't that diversified, so they're kind of redundant.
You see that all the time. You take on new clients, and they've been with some previous advisors. They've got 27 different or 35 different funds, but if you just lift the lid, they're all investing in broadly the same things. So, but the thing they're diversifying at a fund level, when actually they're not. That's what Nick Murray's kind of, pointing out. Whereas something that Nick's got, you've got like 10,000 underlying securities, which is with one fund. So that's arguably far, far better. But yeah, the more you dig into this, the more questions probably arise. So perhaps we'll have to have you back again, Emmelia, in a future episode when one of us takes off for holidays.
I'll just keep reading everything you send, and then I'll come and interrogate you about it.
All right. Well, I think we're at 83 minutes in, and this has been Emmelia. Thank you so much. You've been a star. Thank you for your prep work and everything else. You've contributed a great deal. We're going to see you, Emmelia, at Humans Under Management. So if we don't win the Next Gen Best Podcast of the Year award, you're going to be in trouble. I think we can say it's a wrap for this episode. Thank you, dear Trappists, for your precious time and your input into the show. Rate us, leave a review on iTunes. 6 out of 5 stars would be lovely. Watch us, God forbid, on YouTube, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until the next time, adios from the Trap Pack, and take care out there, folks. Goodbye.